Next, we're going to talk a little more about site selection and implementation and management of herbaceous plants. So, site selection is very important when you're talking about herbaceous plants, whether they're annuals or perennials or even trees or shrubs. You need to know those plant requirements, the sunlight, the water. You need to understand the slope of the space, what the exposure is, if it's going to have, you know, straight south hot winds or straight north cold winds. The microclimates within that area, whether you're gonna deal with weeds, a soil type, whether it's sandy or loamy, has lots of organic matter, or it's just a real clay mess of some new construction. You need to look at your landscape. You need to visit it if it's a new landscape. Normally, I always suggest for new homeowners to actually spend a year in that space. Don't plant anything yet. If you're going to plant something, plant a couple containers and put them out by your front door, but really get a idea of how your landscape works and what's in your landscape. Sometimes when people move in the middle of winter, they don't even realize how big of a plant mass they have within their landscape beds because everything's dormant and cut down. So spend that time, understand the sun patterns, the wind patterns, where the shade as is, what happens to your next door neighbors, what does your next door neighbor have, can you kind of borrow some of their landscape to kind of add to your landscape. So looking at your landscape is very important. I'm looking at it both from the front view and also from the top view. So taking that base map, applying the base map to it, adding that site analysis is very important so that you can do that. Taking this and putting this into a great garden journal is going to be very important for your landscape and for you to kind of keep track of what you add and subtract and how your landscape changes over the years. So a good thing to do is to kind of color code everything, see where your landscape beds are, see where your trees are. You can use Google Maps. This is a great tool to do. It's free. We have some videos that you are able to watch that kind of walks you through how to do this on Google Maps. So next is implementation, and you need to begin with your end in mind. What do you want to do? Don't kind of go as you are or just kind of add things as you see them. Don't be one of those onesie people. Kind of think of what you want. Make it practical. Are you going to have a vegetable garden? How are you going to get to that vegetable garden? Are you going to go in from the back door, off your deck, from a side door? Do you have to walk all the way around? Do you want to entertain? Do you want a fire pit? Do you want a patio? So understanding what you want to do within your landscape is very important before you even begin adding those plants to your landscape. Answer these questions for implementation is I want to have a berm that is built up to help slow down some of the wind, to diffuse some of the traffic noise. I want to entertain in my backyard and have it completely flat so people are able to walk around and not feel like they're gonna fall. And what can I do to this spot? What do I have in this spot that I can do? And is there a plant that will do this? Is there a plant that will shade out the area or create a wall next door so I don't have to look at my neighbor. So really answer some of those questions before you even start at the nursery and go and buy those plants. So just some design principles as we're thinking and kind of deciding what plants that we really need to add to our landscape. Composition is really important. Order, rhythm, unity, balance and style. There's some spatial scale. The spatial scale within the landscape is much more large than it is indoors. So a lot of people try to put an 8-foot entry into your landscape. Well, that's actually very small when you're looking at the landscape. You actually want to increase that to 10 to 15 feet instead of an 8-foot height. So understand spatial scale. Rhythm and repetition is really good if you want to move your eye along and move your eye down a path to get to somewhere. Dominance is important if you want to kind of showcase something and have your eye go to something. If you want to stand at your kitchen counter, and look out at a specific place. And sometimes simplicity is much more hard to do than complex. So the next thing you want to do is know, what do you have? Do you have perennials, bulbs? What do you have? What annuals have you tried? What annuals do you want to try? What is the age and condition of those plants that are already within that landscape? Are they quality? Do they just need to be completely removed and start over? And then what were the previous management impacts that happened to that? If it was a brand new place that you're moving into, did the people not really take care of it? Is it full of weeds? Do you need to kind of control that before you start adding your herbaceous plants into your landscape? Your location is really important. Making sure that the contribution to the current and future landscape, those plants are actually going to be able to survive that location. The impact on or of other categories is important. Comparison in zones. Remember, you could have some microclimates within that. What is the attitude of your landscape? What do you want it to do? What do you want it to say? And if they aren't where you want them to be, you do know that you could just get a spade and you can move them. So manage what it is and where it is. Is it a flat area, a bermed area? Is it a depression or raised bed? So you may need to manage the exact same plant in a different way depending on where it is. Or can it or should it be moved? If it's not thriving well, is it something that maybe needs to be moved? Do you have something that's said on the back part of your plant tag that said it was part sun? Well, is it in an area where it is getting a little bit of sun but not enough sun, so it's not really thrifty? It's not really doing what you think it should do. Should it be moved? Should you move it out so it gets a couple more hours worth of sun to see if it actually will do better? Just because you have it doesn't mean you should. Here's where we kind of get into the conversation of native, introduced, exotic, aggressive, and invasive plants. Lots of people want all natives. A lot of us live in an urban environment with very clayey soil, very urban soils. Most of the natives within the state of Nebraska grew up and are prairie plants. They really don't like that clay urban soil that we have to deal with. So sometimes they just don't do well. So maybe you do need to look at maybe some introduced plants to help fill some of those areas while you are improving your soils and could potentially then add back some of those natives. Some plants are very aggressive. You have to understand that. You have to be able to control that. Some natives are very aggressive. Some um, some varieties that came from natives that are more introduced may be a better fit that aren't quite as aggressive or invasive. So know what you have, know what you need to do with them. The compaction and soil damage. Remember, foot and vehicle traffic and construction is not good on any soil. We want to try to stay off that soil as much as possible. Adding some compost and mulch and top dressing to your landscape especially if it's a landscape bed, is really important for your plants. And then watering slow and low is really important. Try to keep as much of that water off those plants as possible. I know that when it rains, that's not anything that we can do, but if you can try to avoid that as much as possible, that will definitely help your plants in the long run. Understand the symptoms of overing and underwatering. A lot of the symptoms are similar. So you may need to just get down there and dig with a screwdriver or a landscape point or something like that. You will always have some signal plants. You will have those plants are the first ones that are going to start kind of wilting when it's too dry or too wet. So know what those plants are and be able to spot those when you see some signs of deterioration in those plants. Drought and wind and competition definitely will make watering different. Nutrients. Look and see and get a soil test before you need to add anything. Sometimes and most times there's not anything that you need to add when in line of nutrients. Is it a nutrient issue, a pest or disease issue, a herbicide issue? Make sure that you investigate that plant and you try to figure that out before you do anything, before you spray something or remove it. Weed control is very important. That's that competition. That competition is always fighting with space in the soil. So root space and water, weeds are always gonna compete with the plants, and most times those weeds are gonna win. So hoeing them out, hand weeding them out. If you are hoeing them out, make sure that you are trying to stay as shallow as possible, because some of those herbaceous plants do have pretty shallow roots. Mulch, no more than 2 inches after watering. Once you Sometimes it takes a while for that water to get through that mulch layer, so watering before to make sure that the soil is moist, and then adding that mulch onto that site. That way that water then does stay within that soil profile. Don't put mulch up against the crowns. That helps hold that water in. It also helps attract insects and diseases and critters to that crown. Also watch for mulch pizza formation. That's when that mulch starts to begin to kind of lace itself and kind of create like a crust where it's all kind of one big huge piece, and that will actually help and make sure that will make sure water's not getting all the way through, and it also will make sure the oxygen is not being able to filter back and forth between the soil. Some natives and heat lovers fail in organic mulch.